Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Adam. For those that I haven't met, my wife Lindsay and I have a daughter Mackenzie who's 7. This is our 3rd conference, and so just want to say it's been amazing spending the weekend with everybody here. For those that are first time, hope you guys enjoyed it. Today's session that we have is on WSS data collection program. It's more than the numbers. Today we're going to hear from families and their lived experiences with WSS symptoms. These stories are framed through the data collection, which is powered by RareX. So we hope you guys feel inspired. It's my pleasure to welcome to the stage Christina O'Keefe, working mom, problem solver, exhausted.
As well as Connor O'Keefe.
Welcome, Connor.
Thank you very much. This is my why. As we begin our storytelling experience here with this session, framed with the data, this is my favorite part of the conference, and I've shared with many of you, our kids in their daily lives don't get the support when they walk into a room and they just feel the love and their confidence just goes through the roof. So Connor's been on cloud 9 throughout these few days, and as we, as board members, put our blood, sweat, and tears into this event, this is why. And his story is one where our journey for WSS started right at birth, shortly after birth. And our first year, we spent a lot of time in the hospital for failure to thrive, for feeding difficulties, just trying to figure out what's going on. With the judgment, with the questions, as you are feeling that with parents. And we found out his diagnosis at 10 months, and that really was the beginning of gaining the knowledge, figuring out how we can best support him and his potential in life. And there's a picture of him walking with a walker at 2.5. And he is so resilient, he's so persistent, and as you can see, he's full of joy. So I've learned a lot from him as well. Since one of my words was problem solver, I really focus on data, and he is a good reminder for me on why life is important. So he's 9 years old, he's thriving, and I couldn't be more proud of him. And while I have the stage too, I just want to call out my mom, Connor's grandma. It takes a village, and we wouldn't be able to do what we could do without her support. So my task here, before you hear more of these stories, is really just to set the stage of the importance of our data collection program. I mentioned yesterday that this was a focus for us for creating a patient registry, just to have in one place all of the data that we as families who experience or impacted by WSS, what are our lived experiences, and really putting that in a very systematic way so it can be most accessible to researchers. And so over the past 2 years, our goal was really to get as much enrollment and as many surveys completed as possible, because there's so much rich information in that data that we want to make it available for accelerating research as best as possible. So those of you who have enrolled, thank you very much. For those of you who are new to our platform in this registry, you can take a look at it at wss.rare-x.org. Here's just a few screenshots of how you can access the system. Once you put in that URL, where it's circled, you can get started or log back in. Those of us who are enrolled, those surveys can come up every few years or annually for us to provide any updates if there's new skills that have been gained or any new symptoms that have emerged. This is an opportunity to make sure that data is being captured. Just wanted to flag kind of this is what that dashboard looks like. And when you first enroll, doing what they call a head-to-toe survey. This has been really important for us for WSS because the symptoms really cover a lot of different body symptoms. And so this head-to-toe survey really kind of flags all the potential systems that could exist within our children. And so I just wanted to flag that one. Data sharing also, if you're interested in sharing your data for research, you can consent into that or you don't have to. And then the other survey that we've been promoting this year is identifying those most impactful symptoms through what's called a burden of illness survey. So those will be on your dashboard, among others. Don't feel the pressure to complete all of these in one sitting. That's impossible. These surveys are flagged with time commitments. It could be 5 minutes, it could be 10 minutes, it could be 20 minutes. Kind of identify what is reasonable for you. So this is our enrollment so far. Our goal was 200 and we're currently at 221. And actually I looked this morning, 222. Someone enrolled during the conference. And you can see this is global data. And it was really important for us at the foundation to make sure that we are inclusive of no matter where someone lives and impacted by WSS, they can participate. And that's what the RareX platform really provides. And so you can see where our enrollment looks across the world and then certainly by countries. And so I was getting a couple questions as far as enrollment. We have in the United States 127. I think that's followed by the UK. For those of you in the room, Alex, you're at 22. And then certainly good representation from different countries across the globe. So here's the latest data that was pulled by RareX for the symptoms most reported from our community who've completed those surveys. This is that head-to-toe survey. So you can see development issues are at the top of the list, followed by brain and nervous systems growth and so forth. This is information that can be really powerful for those of you who want to advocate in your doctor's office. If you're getting questions like, is this symptom WSS or not? We get a lot of those questions on our Facebook group. This is a report that is available on our website. We will be issuing an updated report here soon. This is a report you can take to your doctor's office and says, yes, others who are impacted by WSS are also reporting this. I'm not crazy, like help me out here. So these are things that we wanted to arm you with good information. And then this is the most recent results pulled as of this week on the burden of illness survey, those symptoms being reported that are most impactful. So you can see the list there across the top. And I have a bad angle, so I can't see the top one. Okay, behavioral issues, which we hear a lot about. And so this can be helpful as well as we're thinking from the foundation standpoint, how can we prioritize different research investments into the symptoms that are impacting you the most? So this has been the new survey added this year. We've already put some of this into our request for proposals to researchers. We've already funded a new proposal from Dr. Harris and Dr. Ng around behavior in cognitive and neurodevelopment symptoms. So we are listening to you as a community. So please keep telling us what's important. I also starred the different symptoms that you are going to be hearing from the stories that are about to come on stage here. So just wanted to flag that if you're experiencing a symptom, you are not alone again, and you'll hear that in those stories that we're about to share. So I just want to conclude, it's about the why, and I'm really appreciative of the families who are going to be a bit vulnerable up here on stage and share their stories. But just those of you in the room, like lean into each other, learn from each other. We as a family, through our experiences of attending these conferences for a few times, I've learned so much just by being here and picking up the tips and tricks from others. So hopefully that's also your experience, and please let us know how we can be helpful at the foundation. And with that, Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christina and Connor. It's my pleasure to welcome to the stage Alexandra Gillett, investigator, persistent, first-time mom. I would also like to introduce Helen Hernandez, once again, our Chief Scientific Officer. She will be discussing some of the data today, too.
All right, hi guys. So RY is our little warrior Pip. He's currently 4 years old. I wish I could have brought him today, but he's with Grandma and Pepe today. Thanks, guys. My husband and I just recently moved to New York. If you're from the area, please reach out. And as you can probably tell, we're expecting a sibling in about 2 months. Our journey with Philip started in June 2020. He's our first child, born in the height of the COVID lockdowns. Besides all that in the background, we got off to a pretty rocky start. Oh, there he is. We got off to a pretty rocky start. A few hours after birth, he was taken to the NICU because of respiratory distress. Later on, we realized probably related to the low muscle tone and obstructive sleep apnea that we would find later. But he had inhaled some meconium and was taking much longer to get out of the NICU than we were initially told. He also had anemia and hypothyroidism. All of those things at the time seemed like doable challenges that we were told may or may not be transient, but probably we would be going home with a nice, healthy baby. One of the first red flags that we got that maybe something else was going on was failure to thrive. So once he was able to be taken out of the NICU, we tried nursing for some time, and then appointment after appointment, week by week, he was not gaining any weight. The pediatrician was obviously quite concerned. We switched to pumping and measuring everything, supplementing with formula. He was still falling off the charts below the first percentile, which was really rough for us to be dealing with because there was sort of an underlying implication that maybe we're just not feeding him enough. Maybe we're not doing something right. So we struggled to get him up to 10 pounds, which was always if we can just get to 10 pounds, we're gonna be okay. And eventually, we started putting rice, cereal in his formula as well. And eventually, he was able to get up to at least a little bit above the first percentile, and we felt like we were gonna be okay. But he was still growing really slowly.
So I'll chime in here with the way that the data supports that story is that 75% of 120 respondents described short stature as a symptom that it occurs with Wiedemann-Steiner syndrome. And 63% of respondents said undergrowth, and 14 said growth hormone deficiency. So these are symptoms that are real, and so if you're not getting to where you want to be on the chart, there's a reason, and this is the data that supports that.
The next symptom that I wanted to touch on that we were impacted by early in life was sleep apnea and other sleep issues. So as a first-time parent, I was never quite sure if Philip was sleeping enough or the right way or waking up more than usual. It seemed to be maybe okay, but we always thought his breathing didn't sound great. Even when he was awake, he sounded like a little pug dog on a hot day. So that was a little bit like, I don't think other children sound like that, even though this is our first one. So at 13 months, our pediatrician sent us off to the ENT. The ENT then sent us off to a sleep study, which was its own quite traumatic experience for me. And the return result was 97 events per hour, which if you have a background in sleep apnea rates, 30 is considered severe. So after talking to the ENT and convincing him that we didn't need to rush off to the hospital that day, that I thought maybe that number was a little bit over representative based on what I witnessed night to night versus what I witnessed at the sleep study, we did get pushed to an emergency tonsil and adenoid surgery that happened within a few weeks later. Then we were told in the hospital, okay, you'll probably be there maybe 2-3 nights. Once he recovers, oxygen's back up, you'll be good. And that was not the case. We were there for a week, and his oxygen never came back up to where they wanted. So we were sent home with a CPAP, which is another trial we went through. Thankfully, after 4 months, we were able to do a follow-up sleep study and went down to 2 events per hour. Massive difference. And we're able to get off the CPAP. We also had less spitting up, which was great, and I think helped with weight gain. Now we're 5 sleep studies later at 4. They literally just called me to set up a 6th sleep study to follow up again yesterday during the conference. But we're sleeping well, and we're just on Zyrtec every night, so that I consider to be a success.
So if you're wondering if the sleep issues are just something you're experiencing, they're not. The symptoms that were reported in the sleep domain that was filled out by 56 respondents were insomnia, sleep apnea, maintenance insomnia, which is where you wake up in the middle of the night and have a hard time falling back asleep, grinding of the teeth, and then circadian rhythm issues. So all of those were things that respondents said, yes, that's a symptom that occurs within Wiedemann-Steiner syndrome.
All right, and the last symptom that I'm going to touch on that I know a lot of us have early in childhood with our warriors is low muscle tone or hypotonia. This was probably the other first real red flag besides failure to thrive, that there was something more wrong that caused us to go and pursue a diagnosis. At first, he just wasn't quite lifting his head at the right month, they were saying. And then as we continued to miss gross motor milestones, the pediatrician was very, very kind, didn't want to alarm us, and kept saying, oh, you know, he'll get there, he'll get there. But eventually he did concede and said, yeah, maybe you want to go to early intervention and get some PT. So at 9 months, we started PT. We loved our physical therapist. She worked with him. Obviously, as you know, WSS warriors can be very excited to interact with people, so she had a great time with him. By 2.5, he actually almost tested out of PT, but they managed to keep us on until he was 3. Throughout his struggle with not quite being where his peers were at daycare in terms of crawling or walking or sitting or whatever it might be, he always had this dogged determination not to miss out on what all his friends were doing. At home, he had a little puppy walker. He was doing K-turns with that thing better than a lot of adults I see driving their cars. He had, at school, they gave him a little push walker thing that he could get around and interact with his peers. And I just wanted to point out one of the pictures. I don't know if this is a pointer or not, but this one furthest to the left is actually post spinal surgery, which I'm not going to touch on, but that's 2 days after getting home from a surgery on his neck and his lower back that he's already climbing up tables. So, and the last picture on the right is him maybe a couple months ago on a bike with training wheels running around. So now he's running around, jumping, swimming, soccer, football, depending on what country you're from. But he's our little guy.
So abnormal muscle function was something that out of 119 respondents, 53% said was a symptom associated with WSS. 30% said issue with muscles, arms, and legs. Abnormal facial muscles, 22% said that that was a symptom that affects their WSS warriors. Issue with neck muscles and abnormal muscles on the back, 15 and 9% respectively, were what the caregivers said their warriors face.
I almost forgot about my wish. So our wish for Pip specifically is that he gets as much support when he starts kindergarten next year from all his group of people, as well as beyond kindergarten, as he received in the daycare that he's been at since he was 4 months old. And for the community at large, I would say our wish is that we get to a place where there's a faster way to diagnose so that the younger children can start getting the assistance they need quicker and they're able to join our family faster. And also for good progress in the research initiatives that we've been talking about within our lifetimes. So, thank you.
Thank you for sharing your story. That was beautiful. I would love to welcome to the stage Abby and Caleb Wall. Professional pivoters, persistent advocates, constant caterers.
Hi, everyone. I'm Abby Wall.
Caleb.
And our warrior is Jenny Ann. And she is our Y. Jenny Ann was diagnosed with WSS when she was 6 and a half. You got that? Sorry, guys. So Jenny Ann, from the beginning, we, like many of you guys, we knew something just wasn't right. She was born premature, and because of that, we kept being told, oh, she's just premature, she'll outgrow it. And so that kind of followed us, but in our gut, we knew something wasn't right. From little constant diagnoses here and there, eyes, kidneys, lots of things that by themselves are something that's a little concerning, but altogether, that is what warranted the genetic testing. We did genetic testing when she was 2. Nothing came back. They said everything was fine, but we still struggled throughout her journey. When she was 6 and a half, we thought she was having seizures. It was a reaction to a medication, but that took our neurologist to look at her and said she needs more genetic testing. So when that happened, we ended up getting the WSS diagnosis at 6 and a half. And at that time, everything came together. The eyes, the hypotonia, the late walking, all the things that we've seen all kind of made sense. And it became the answer that we were looking for, that we finally had a name and then we had a community. But when we were given our diagnosis, like many of you guys, we were given one sheet of paper with the gene on it, and then we were given a sticky note that had the Facebook page on it. So that was what we were given. And then when we found the Facebook group, we knew, oh my gosh, like we would type in one thing and it would all pop up. And it was like, oh, they're going through this too. There's more people.
So Jenny Ann started we started getting her seen by an ophthalmologist at 6 months old. Our first pediatrician said she had a droopy eyelid and ptosis, and he kept saying she'd grow out of it. We took her one Saturday morning for a doctor's appointment. She was sick, and before asking what's wrong with her, we were asked if she's seen an ophthalmologist, and we told him no, and he said you should have gone when she was about 2 weeks old. So we fell a little bit behind the curve on that, and with the droopy eyelid, they were concerned that she wouldn't be able to see out of her right eye. So they started doing the surgery to address a droopy eyelid, put a piece of Gore-Tex in there to raise it up. And it took her about 3 or 4 months to be able to fully close the eye again. We had about 2 or 3 surgeries to address her ptosis on the right eye as well. And then we also were patching for, was it about 2 years? So about
We attempted patching for a
Attempted
couple
patch,
of
yeah.
years, but that was a fight.
Yeah, I mean, it was 2 to 4 hours a day we had a patch. So about 6 years, when she was about 6, I guess 7, we kind of outgrew the patching and have been on a good path so far with her vision. But it was a struggle at the beginning to get the eyesight corrected.
And the right eye was always so much weaker than her left eye, but everything was delayed the whole time with her developmental delays from the right side. And so the right eye was definitely weaker, and now with the different things that they've given, it's actually gotten stronger. Another thing that she also, we've had experience with are febrile seizures, and then also seizure activity that they're monitoring with EEGs. She started having her first febrile seizure at 9 months old with a UTI that we ended up finding out she had reflux in her kidneys. But that was the first of about 4 febrile seizures, and about a year and a half span. She eventually outgrew them, but when they happened, they were, as some of you know, they were scary. We would end up down at the hospital, be admitted for monitoring, and she eventually did outgrow those. But she also, along with her seizures, a lot of our kiddos with neurology, she also has Chiari malformation and has had 2 decompression surgeries. The first one was in 2021, and her second surgery was just summer a year ago. And she has been headache-free minus 1 or 2 little headaches this entire time.
So abnormal eye movement is something that 33% of 120 respondents said were a symptom of WSS warriors, 24% for ptosis, and then I guess maybe I need to get my eyes checked. Nearsightedness, 20%, farsightedness 17%, visual impairment 9%, and major vision issues 7%. So if you're at the doctor's and there's something going on with your vision, you're not alone in that. And in terms of the headaches, the 16% of the 107 respondents said that headaches or migraines are something that their WSS warrior encounters. Abnormal EEGs, 11% of the respondents, with several saying that they're unsure. 8% of the respondents said that seizures were something that they encounter, and 8% said unusual movements are something they encounter. Thank you.
All right, so another, something we all deal with is GI issues. We put constant caterers up there because Jenny Ann's constantly asking what restaurant we get to go eat at, or starts at breakfast, what's for dinner and what's for breakfast tomorrow. So we struggled quite a bit getting her GI addressed. It would get to points when she was younger where she'd go 3 or 4 days without having a bowel movement, and she would get sick if she would eat or throw up in the middle of the night because she wasn't going to the bathroom. We'd end up down at the ER. They're feeling her stomach, saying, yep, she's backed up. They did an x-ray to show it as well. Enema, and a few months would go by. We repeat the same thing again. We started seeing GI, and this was before a diagnosis. They put her on Miralax and Benefiber, but we found out because she doesn't like to drink, she wasn't drinking enough water, so it was having a reverse reaction to it, where she'd get stomach cramps, pain, and cry about stomach aches and everything. After we got the diagnosis, though, our GI doctor kind of changed gears on us and addressed it and said, well, let's take her off the medicines and try and address it through her diet. So through that, we put her on smoothies. We would make our own smoothies, make batches at a time on the weekend, and fill our freezer up with red Solo cups of about 20 to 30 smoothies at a time. And and tell her, yes, once you drink your smoothie, we'll go to Chick-fil-A or wherever you want to go. So it took
You can
her,
have the mac and cheese.
right. So, I mean, she was about, we're doing good now, but it took about 8 or 9 when I felt like we were getting on a good path as far as a good GI and a good regular movements and everything.
So again, this is something that really tracks with the data. Out of 116 respondents, 58% said that they experienced feeding difficulties, 53% constipation, 32% esophagus issues, 22% stomach issues, 17% defecation issues, 15% dysmotility issues, and 8% intestine issues.
So, like many of our warriors, Jenny Ann struggles with anxiety. It's something that we noticed even very early on. Anxiousness, she was always very social, like so many of our kids, wanted to talk to everybody. So one minute she would be so excited to go somewhere, and then all of a sudden it would just be a switch. And the anxiety would come over. It would be the tiniest little thing, and it would be built up. So things would be building up. And so the anxiety has always been a piece of it. She is on fluoxetine for her anxiety. Now that she's starting to hit 12, we're seeing that we may need to make some adjustments. But the anxiety piece has always been there. So when she was about 7, we decided to get Rosie. Rosie is her service dog, and we got Rosie as a puppy, and they really bonded. Rosie does help Jenny Ann a lot. This is a picture right here. This was after school, and school is hard. The anxiety, the social situation. We noticed when she was younger, about kindergarten, first grade, peer relationships were great, school was fine. When we started getting a little older, the more the gap got, the bigger the issue that we had, the bigger the social divide was. So Jenny Ann would come home and have perfect day, supposedly, at school, but then would blow up when she would get home. And this is what happened one day when she blew up, and Rosie went and sat in her lap, and that's one of her commands, but that's something they just did naturally. And she goes and she sits in her lap, and she helps Jenny Ann to calm down. And Rosie has really helped us with this, but for about 3 years, every single day leaving school until 5th grade, she would cry. We would have about a 45-minute meltdown. We knew we couldn't go anywhere right after school. We knew that we would come home. Wednesdays were great because Wednesdays she went straight to OT, and her occupational therapist was able to work her magic, and it was great. But other than that, it was full on relieving all the stress from the day, and it would happen about 3 hours after, she got home from school, but it would just be built up. So you could see that it was coming, and it would just be full-on meltdowns. With our kiddos too, one of the things that we're also talking about is peer relationships, which I feel like the anxiety, the social piece, it all kind of runs hand in hand. Friends are hard. Friends are hard for regular kids, but friends are really hard for Jenny Ann. She does not have friends at school. And we had to find other outlets to get her that piece that every kid deserves to have. Sorry. So we heard about Team Impact from the group, and we signed Jenny Ann up for Team Impact. This is her with Berkeley. Berkeley is a cheerleader that they had an instant bond. And it's one of those things that I cried the minute that we were there. The first tour, because she left and she's like, Berkeley's my best friend. And she feels that way with almost every single one of the cheerleaders on the team. She has people that support her and love her unconditionally. And it's those where we think about with friends creating these friendships at school. Okay, let's find you a friend at school, let's find this. But this is the organic friendships that she has created on her own. We don't have those friends at school. It's hard finding friends even in family and in neighborhood, but we had to kind of venture out and find something else. So Jenny Ann has a place that she feels like she's at home and looks at them as her best friends.
I love that for Ginny Ann. I'm really glad. So 120 respondents, 52% of them said that anxiety is something that affects their WSS warriors. 34% say difficulty making friends is a symptom that occurs. And 33% say difficulty with nonverbal behaviors.
Okay, so our wish. This is, the picture on the right is from our Yes I Can. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with that. It's a national program, but our county participates in it. And each kid is nominated from their school. So kids, it's open to kids with IEPs, and each special education teacher nominates a child. Jenny Ann was nominated by one of her special education teachers, and then was chosen to represent her entire school. She was voted on by the teachers and was chosen to represent her entire school at our county Yes I Can. So this is my wish for our kids, is that they're seen, that they're accepted for who they are, because they are incredible just as they are.
And then, also, our wish for the Warriors is, as we get more data and we get the diagnosis for the younger kids and the new families, is that you can go to the doctors with the data in hand already and say, here's what we're diagnosed with, and here's the data to support what we need help with, right off the bat, and get going with it to have a good foundation to help them succeed and grow in life.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for sharing your story. And Caleb, Abby, I just want to say real quick, when we talk about friends, right? I get emotional. I've seen my daughter gravitate toward Jenny Ann all weekend, and it makes me so happy. And so understand she's got a great network of new best friends here, and I'm just so happy for you guys. It's okay. Yeah, so they're all best friends, right? So thank you. It's my pleasure to also welcome to the stage next, Marcy Landman, family referee tired. I also have a special guest I'd like to introduce, Everest. Go here, Everest. And Everest would like to introduce his buddy,
Jordan/J-Dog.
Okay, so are you ready?
yeah.
Obviously, this is Jordan, and he is, RY, my husband's. It's not only Jordan, it affects his little sister. Okay. Jordan was diagnosed in second grade with autism. We didn't have medical complications except for short stature. He had his adenoids removed, tonsils, just your run-of-the-mill, could be typical childhood medical issues. But as he started to progress through school, thank you, I'm nervous, I'm sorry. He got an autism diagnosis because something was different. The autism diagnosis then ended up turning into a pervasive developmental disorder diagnosis. And that's what we went through for years, that diagnosis. In one way it was good, in one way it wasn't. We allowed and we pushed Jordan to be more independent. He was a good child. We didn't have behavioral issues. There were some we didn't have, we do now. And the independence we gave him, I think, has made this part of his journey a little bit more difficult on us. So it's something that you'll want to keep in mind as your children grow. I guess I'm gonna slide behind. What we're gonna talk about today is his behavior and his intellectual disability, and he's gonna tell you about his journey through school. I'll fill in some of it for him. So his behavior. Jordan was 13 and when we adopted our daughter. For 13 years, he was an only child. So we adopted our daughter and, lack of better words, all hell broke loose in my house. And it still remains that way today. They don't get along at all. And the picture from Halloween a couple years ago is a perfect indication of what it is in my house every day. She's an unhappy child and she hates Jordan. I think the feelings are mutual though, between the two of them. But how do you feel about your sister?
I mean, I feel good. Go ahead, Helen.
So there are a lot of symptoms that are reported in the behavior/psychiatric domain. 60% of the 120 respondents describe temper tantrum, 56% autism spectrum disorder, 56% aggressive violent behavior, 56% short attention span, 55% impulsivity, 52% anxiety, 51% repetitive stereotypic behavior. As we move down the line here, we're looking at 41% mood problems, 39% hyperactivity, 38% self-injurious behavior, 34% of respondents said that difficulty making friends was a symptom of WSS, and 33% said difficulty with nonverbal behaviors, 33% unusual eye gaze, 21% OCD, and 8% depression.
Before we get into his educational journey, and we have some really raw stories to share with that, I do want to say that behavior-wise, I think that we need the most support with the siblings because I see my younger daughter mimicking a lot of Jordan's behaviors, and I think that just creates more turmoil in our household. Anytime we decide we're going to do something as a family, which we try to do often, it's horrible. Somebody's screaming, somebody's in tears. So I think that on the behavior side of it, that's very important to get help for the siblings. Jordan in education started off in a private school at 4. He did 1 year of kindergarten. He was excelling. Amazing reader. I'm sure you guys all know that. Math wasn't really an issue at that point because he was using his fingers and toys to count. Socially, he was isolating himself, so the kindergarten teacher decided to hold him back. By 2nd grade, they told us that they didn't have the support that was required for Jordan to continue in private school, and we put him in public school. And you figure he's 20, so this was a long time ago. He went into public school. He was mainstreamed all through elementary. He was mainstreamed in middle school, and that's where we started to see some issues, not only academically, but socially with the other kids. And I think it was that gap. He could keep up when everybody was little. And as they grew, they outgrew him. We did make it to high school. We did graduate high school. But we've had issues. The teachers, I don't know if they understood Jordan. I don't know if I understand Jordan.
Jesus Christ.
So a lot of Jordan's behaviors were just kind of brushed to the side. And he took advantage of it. And Jordan, I'm sure everybody in here knows, is part of our fire department. And the chief gave him a knife. Force of habit. I know you guys probably have your kids, when you pack, they pack everything they own to go for a one-night stay. Well, every day before school, Jordan would pack his particular things, being a knife, one of them. They allowed him to not go through the metal detector and into class. Well, Jordan also started vaping. And disinhibited, compulsive, was sitting in class, pulled out a vape that we were unaware he had, and just exhaled a big puff of smoke in class. Of course, he went to the principal's office, and he knew he was in trouble, and he was acting nervous, and the security asked him to empty his pocket, and there was a knife. That is a huge no-no. I reached out to Christine. I didn't know what to do. That was in December or January of his senior year, and they wanted to expel him or send him to a alternative school. My husband and I, and I'm going to throw him under the bus, cried in the meeting, hysterically bawling, not him, I was, in the meeting, because the alternative school option wasn't an option for my child. They're learned behaviors. I'm not putting him in a room where there's bad behaviors. We did form a community where I live. We got a hold of people on the school board, neighbors reached people on the school board, and they ended up giving him a 10-day suspension and allowing him back into school to graduate. But he graduated, thank goodness. So do you want to talk about how was school for you?
So I want to explain,
Back a little bit.
so going through school was pretty hard for me in most parts because there were some, difficulties that occurred.
What kind of difficulties?
So it was hard for me making friends because there was people that were older than me and harder to understand. And most people, are like that and don't understand others. So it's a better way off to explain, that making friends in school, it's a little bit different than what you guys think.
You're doing good.
And so I worked my way through school to graduate through 23, which was a better way off to explain to you guys that I'm now 20 and it's a whole different story. As I grew up as a kid was different. So I got my license back in 23. Well, I got my license in 23, and it's a whole different. How to explain? It's a whole different road for kids. I mean, I think that the families out there that have kids that have the same foundation, that you should let your kids go out and.
Don't parent.
Come on.
One of the biggest issues through school, and I think it's the love that our children have, and although they have some autistic features, they're more sociable than anybody I've ever seen on the face of the earth. So Jordan would be bullied, and he would come home and didn't see it as bullying. Well, they're my friends. They were paying attention to me. Well, somebody kicking you is not your friend. So that was one of the hardest things I would say he dealt with on a daily basis through school. But we did find a couple very good core friends that have good rapport with mostly my husband, that Jordan does still socialize with. They go and do things with, probably get in trouble with. Huh? You want to add anything else? Are you done?
I mean, it's a whole different story on the reason why. So, me getting my license was the biggest thing for me.
Okay, we're not talking about license, we're talking about your school, when you were in school. What can you tell the other kids? How can they navigate school with making friends and?
So the way in school, and I'm gonna tell the kids this, it's easier than what I experienced was having a helper by my side to make sure that I had everything with me, and making friends is really good on the side because there's kids out there that have they have it really good. I mean, I'm not gonna get into that, but some kids are rude, but you gotta understand where they come from and what they experience.
Good job, Jordan.
So in terms of what people may experience in their school systems, cognitive impairment is something that's liable to come up because 74% of 107 respondents said that that was a symptom that they experience. Coordination issues, 50% of the respondents said that that was an issue they faced. 24% say memory impairment, which of course impacts your school, and 8% say unusual movements impacts their nervous system and their brain domain.
So our wish as a family, obviously we deal with the outburst, the aggression, and the intellectual disability. Those are our main focus, is that therapy for those areas becomes more tuned into WSS. We sit and we listen to the therapist, and they try your run-of-the-mill, not that I'm knocking therapy because therapy is good, but Jordan, you have to be nice to your parents. I will. Jordan, you need to do your chores. I will. I think that there's other avenues, and where I live, WSS is not widely known. So that's my wish, is that WSS gets out there, and as the research continues, that it is more pinpoint to WSS therapy. Oh, so Jordan went to prom his senior year and called me crying. He won prom king. Thank you.
Marcy, thank you for sharing your story. Jordan, well done. J-Dog. Okay, so thank you, WSS community, for sharing your data and making your voices heard. One more time, a round of applause for all of our speakers today and our families. And I just want to wrap up just talking about the importance of this research and the data. We in this room have the ability to do something very special. Mackenzie was diagnosed in 2018. She was 1.5 years old. University of Chicago, met with a geneticist, been there for over 30 years, handed us a paper and said, here's a syndrome, here's a Facebook group, good luck. And for us, it was like, okay, what do we do? Every year, we've had more and more cases diagnosed, and the data that we get is only going to help future generations of those with WSS. So it's really important that we register our children through RareX. The website is there on the bottom. Helen's also a point person for that. So please, if you're open to it, reach out to her. Let's get your child enrolled. Like I said, it's going to help future generations, and that's what's so important about what we can do. So thank you.
Okay, the magician's starting at 2:30, so if anybody wants to start heading over there, again, please send a trusted adult or caregiver that can help your child. Thanks.
Additionally, our next session starts at 2:30 in this room, so if you're, once you get set up on the magician, we will be starting at 2:30 with Dr. Ng and Dr. Harris. Their intros are for them, or just should I have them go?